Alright, welcome back. So in the last week, we have introduced how to store these records into blocks, which can be either spanned or unspanned, and we can also use this sequencing order for storing the records, which can have different ways, either video calling continuous, or we can use some links to connect them together for storing a larger size records. However, in the real world, when we are storing data into database systems, we may have some very large objects, which are called BLOB, or the binary large objects. It can be supported by the modern database systems, even though, for the blocks, we can hold about 4K of the data to be stored inside it. However, sometimes we may have very large objects like images or sounds or movies. We may also need to store them into database system. Then how can we do this? So to store these kinds of larger scale objects into blocks, we can use different manners to store it actually, and to attempt to class the blocks together and store them in a sequence of blocks. There are different ways. For example, we can store them into on a cylinder or cylinders of the disk. If we have larger scale of the objects, we can just divide them into several blocks, and then we can store all the blocks together on one single cylinder or on some continuous cylinders instead, which will be very easy for the disk to read at one time, because we just move this arm to a position and then rotate these kinds of plates. Then should be able to read all the blocks on the same cylinder out very easily. Another way is that we can store them on a linked list of blocks. In other words, we can use some logical link to link these blocks together. We can read one block first, and then we can use this link to read the following blocks sequentially. So in a logical perspective, it can also be very effective. However, when we are storing them on the disk, we may need to consider how to arrange these blocks on the disk. Another way is that we can stripe the BLOB across several disks, because for the disk we have several plates. Also at the same time, we can also have several disks simultaneously. Normally for a machine or for a server, we have several disks. If we have several disks, so we can just stripe alternate blocks of this BLOB across several disks. In other words, we can read all these disks simultaneously, so we will be able to read the data of the BLOB out very easily. So this method allows us to read these blocks simultaneously out across multiple disks, because for each of the disks we can have one arm. However, if we have several disks, we can use several arms to read all these blocks together at the same time, which will be another option. We can store this BLOB on the disk. So it really depends on which way we choose, or which way the DBMS decides to store this BLOB on the disk. This will be a very important problem, because the real world, the data we have nowadays are growing very fast. Also, as the appearing of the cell phones, we may have very large images and movies and videos appearing nowadays. If we plan to store them into database systems, we may need to consider how to partition the data into several blocks, and also consider how to arrange the blocks, so we'll be able to very easy to write as well as reading these kinds of blocks out, so we can have the recovered original large scale